Welcome to the deep dive. Pull up a chair because you are the essential third person in today's conversation.
All right, grab a seat.
We've got a lot of ground to cover today. We're looking at a chain reaction that is actively rewriting the rules of the global economy.
Completely rewriting them.
Right, and I want you to think about this as we get started. How do military strikes happening thousands of miles away end up dictating the price of your groceries? Or the routing of massive ocean freighters and, the shifting balance of global power?
It's a profound question. I mean, we often treat geopolitics as something that just happens over there, safely contained within national borders.
Right, like it's a headline and nothing more.
Exactly. But the reality of our hyper-connected world means a disruption in one very specific, narrow maritime corridor instantly ripples right into your daily life.
So today we're exploring the immediate global economic and geopolitical shockwaves of the early March 2026 U.S.-Israel military strikes on Iran.
And to do this, we are pulling from a really massive stack of data.
We really are. We've got predictive economic models from J.P. Morgan and Thomson Reuters. We've got real-time maritime congestion data from Everstream.
Agricultural supply chain reports, too.
Yeah, those are wild. And some incredibly sweeping regional analyses from the Arab Center, Washington, D.C. Our mission today is to extract the most vital insights from this massive geopolitical event.
Because the volume of news right now is, frankly, overwhelming.
It is. So we want to help you bypass that sheer information overload so you can understand exactly how this shapes global trade, energy, and supply chains.
Cut through the daily noise and look at the structural long-term impacts that just aren't making the front page headlines.
Now, before we jump in, I do need to make a very clear statement. Today's sources contain highly politically charged content and viewpoints regarding the conflicts in the Middle East, including the U.S.-Israel-Iran conflict and the war in Gaza. We want to be absolutely clear. We are not taking any sides, neither left-wing nor right-wing, and we are not endorsing the viewpoints of the authors. Our only goal is to impartially report on the content provided and convey the ideas contained in the original source material so you can understand the full scope of the conversation.
That context is just so crucial for us as we navigate these incredibly complex and sensitive events.
Wait, let's unpack this. The spark for this entire global shockwave happened in late February and early March 2026.
The strikes.
Right. We saw U.S. and Israel strikes on Iran that resulted in the deaths of Supreme Leader Khamenei and the commander of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps.
The IRGC.
Yes, the IRGC. And this immediately spurred Iranian retaliation across the Gulf, hitting targets in Qatar, the UAE, and Kuwait.
And the most immediate, severe consequence of that retaliation was Iran's functional closure of the Strait of Hormuz. We're talking about a 21-mile wide waterway that serves as the jugular vein of the global energy market. The moment Iran announced the closure and began threatening commercial vessels, the maritime insurance market went into absolute panic mode.
We're looking at total paralysis here. The Everstream data shows that right now, there are over 150 massive tankers just anchored helplessly in open waters.
They're essentially sitting ducks.
Yeah.
And this happens because major marine insurers, heavyweights in the industry like Guard, Skuld, and North Standard, they abruptly cancel their war risk coverage.
And without that insurance, commercial shipping simply stops.
It has to. A shipping company cannot legally or financially risk navigating a floating bomb of crude oil into an active war zone without a policy backing them up.
But the situation is compounding, because this isn't just one blocked route. We're facing a dual threat.
The Houthis.
Exactly. Simultaneous to the Hormuz closure, the Houthis have resumed their attacks in the Suez Canal and the Bab el-Mandeb corridor.
Which is historically unprecedented. Having both the Strait of Hormuz and the Suez corridor compromised at the exact same time, it creates the most severe dual-chokepoint shipping crisis we've seen in modern history.
You have roughly 1/3 of the entire global seaborne crude trade compromised simultaneously.
Yeah, 1/3. Just gone.
So if you're a shipping conglomerate and you can't go through Hormuz and you can't go through the Suez Canal, where do you go?
You're forced to go south.
Right.
All 5 of the major global container lines, so that's Maersk, Hapag-Lloyd, MSC, CMA, CGM, and COSCO.
The big guys.
The absolute biggest. They have entirely suspended their Middle East transits. They are now diverting their entire fleets around the Cape of Good Hope at the southern tip of Africa.
When you actually map that out, the sheer scale of the disruption is just hard to wrap your head around.
Well, the hard numbers really paint the picture. This detour adds anywhere from 3,500 to 4,000 nautical miles to a voyage.
Jeez.
It tacks on an extra 14 to 21 days of transit time. And just in fuel alone, it costs roughly $1 million extra per round trip.
$1 million in just fuel?
Right. Furthermore, for the ships that are still trying to navigate anywhere near the periphery of these affected zones, war risk premiums have jumped by $2 to $4 million.
Wow.
And carriers are passing that cost along. They're slapping on emergency conflict surcharges of $2,000 to $4,000 per container.
I want to make sure you, listening right now, understand what this means for you, because this isn't just an abstract problem for oil executives.
No, not at all.
Those massive surcharges and compounding delays affect literally any product you rely on that features Asian components or touches European markets.
Everything.
Everything from consumer electronics to clothing is now taking 3 weeks longer to reach its destination, and it costs significantly more to get it there.
And supply chain disruptions always propagate on a lag. The pain from those 150 tankers sitting idle right now hasn't even fully hit the consumer market yet. We are looking at a delayed shockwave.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. What's fascinating about this mass diversion is how geography is violently reasserting itself.
What's fascinating here is how quickly global trade patterns can revert to historical norms when modern infrastructure fails.
Right, because as all of these massive freighters flee the Middle East and sail south, South Africa is suddenly thrust right back into the role it played before the Suez Canal crisis in 1956.
It's once again the primary maritime crossroads of the world.
Ports like Durban, Cape Town, and Nkwara are seeing massive historic surges in traffic. The Everstream data is showing a 45% spike in vessel arrivals in Durban alone.
45%. On paper, that sounds like a massive economic windfall for South Africa.
Yeah, they're suddenly the only gas station on the highway.
In theory, it's a huge windfall. These diverted ships are putting massive demands on the ports. They need bunkering to refuel for the longer journey, plus heavy maintenance, provisioning, and crew services.
Just massive new revenue streams.
Entirely new revenue streams for the local economy.
But let me play devil's advocate here. Let's look at the reality on the ground. Can South Africa actually handle this volume? Because the Everstream analytics data paints a pretty grim picture.
They were already struggling.
Exactly. South African ports were operating under severe strain long before this dual-chokepoint crisis started.
That is the crucial bottleneck. Years of underinvestment and infrastructure neglect have left their port systems highly vulnerable. Cape Town is currently facing 8-day wait times.
8 days just to dock.
Just to dock. And that's being heavily exacerbated by severe high winds, forcing terminals into standby mode. Durban is averaging wait times of over 32 hours just to berth.
So the ships are arriving, but they're getting stuck in these massive floating traffic jams outside the harbors.
Exactly.
So they have the opportunity of a lifetime, but they're buckling under the weight of it.
And this brings us to a concept sociologists call the fourth turning theory.
I saw that in the sources.
Yeah, several of the geopolitical analyses reference it. It's this idea that societies periodically enter these massive crisis eras where established old institutions fracture and entirely new power arrangements emerge.
And the post-Cold War order of stable, predictable global trade routes is currently fracturing.
And South Africa is sitting right on the fault line of that fracture. If South Africa can urgently modernize its port infrastructure, streamline its notoriously slow customs systems, and manage this traffic, they have the potential to establish long-term economic hegemony in Africa.
They could be the logistics hub of the entire continent for the next century.
Absolutely. But if these shipping conglomerates face endless berthing delays and unreliable service, they will look for alternative routes or hubs the moment they can. South Africa really risks squandering a historic, once-in-a-generation opportunity.
Let's pivot from the traffic jams outside Cape Town to the cargo those ships are carrying. Or I guess more accurately, the cargo they aren't carrying right now.
The energy shock.
The energy shock. We've got roughly 20 million barrels of crude oil a day currently frozen out of the market. We're seeing Brent crude surging past $80 a barrel.
The predictive models from the financial sector are deeply concerning. Depending on the length of the conflict, Goldman Sachs is modeling crude hitting $120 to $150 a barrel.
Which is huge.
And Deutsche Bank has issued warnings that in a worst-case scenario, for instance, if the Strait of Hormuz is actually mined by Iranian forces,
Oh, man.
yeah, we could see crude approach $200 a barrel.
which is absolutely catastrophic for developing economies. The economic models show how this devastates net importing nations in Africa like Kenya, Ethiopia, and the Democratic Republic of the Congo.
It causes immediate currency depreciation and runaway inflation because literally everything costs more to transport.
But wait, what about the African oil producers? Countries like Nigeria and Angola, shouldn't they be cashing in on this price spike, getting rich?
It seems like they should, but they're trapped in what economists call the producer's paradox. Take Nigeria as the prime example. It's the continent's largest crude producer, and oil accounts for over 85% of its export earnings.
Right.
A massive price spike should be a fiscal windfall for their government. But Nigeria lacks sufficient domestic refining capacity.
Oh, I see. So they're pulling all this raw crude out of the ground, but without the domestic refineries, they're stuck. They can't turn it into usable fuel themselves.
It's an incredibly frustrating cycle for them. They're forced to export their raw materials, only to buy them back from the global market at a massive premium as usable petrol and diesel.
Wow.
So while their export revenues go up on paper, their own import costs for the fuel their citizens actually need to drive their cars, run their factories, power their generators, those costs skyrocket. The increased cost of living and domestic manufacturing completely neutralizes any windfall they might have seen.
And while oil naturally gets all the headline attention, there's a hidden crisis buried in these agricultural supply chain reports that really stands out to me. It's not just about energy, it's about food.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the Persian Gulf isn't just an oil hub, it's a central global hub for the production and export of nitrogen-based fertilizers, specifically urea and ammonia.
Right.
Approximately 33% of the entire world's fertilizer supply transits through the Strait of Hormuz.
One-third. One-third of the nutrients we use to grow the world's food is currently stuck behind a military blockade.
Yes, and the production infrastructure itself is actively being damaged. The reports detail an Iranian drone strike that forced Qatar to shut down its liquefied natural gas production.
And natural gas isn't just for heating homes.
Exactly. It's the vital chemical feedstock ingredient required to synthesize nitrogen fertilizer. Following that specific strike on the LNG facility, urea prices in Egypt spiked by $60 a ton almost overnight.
That is insane.
Across North Africa, urea prices jumped 20% in just 48 hours.
For you listening, this is where the geopolitical chess game hits your kitchen table. When fertilizer prices spike like that, farmers are forced to apply less of it to their fields.
And that translates directly, mathematically, to lower crop yields at harvest time.
Lower yields mean global food supplies shrink and the price of your groceries goes up. The agricultural reports warn this is going to exacerbate a triple burden of malnutrition.
Undernourishment, micronutrient deficiencies, and obesity.
Exactly. This hits especially hard in vulnerable developing regions where people are forced to swap out expensive, nutritious food for cheap, highly processed, calorie-dense staples just to survive.
It's a devastating cascading effect. You disrupt the natural gas facility, you lose the chemical feedstock for the fertilizer, you lower the crop yield, you increase global hunger.
And historically, nothing destabilizes a region faster than food insecurity and a skyrocketing cost of living. Which brings us to the broader geopolitical landscape.
In looking at the analyses provided by the Arab Center, Washington, D.C., the Middle East and North Africa in 2026 is an incredibly fragmented environment.
This isn't just a simple binary U.S. versus Iran story.
Not at all. It's a web of interlocking, highly volatile crises. Take Yemen, for example.
Right.
We're seeing a proxy face-off that doesn't just involve Iran, but it's actually between the UAE and Saudi Arabia.
Right.
The Southern Transitional Council, which is backed by the UAE, is openly clashing with the Presidential Leadership Council, which is backed by Saudi Arabia.
Then you look at Syria, where the landscape has completely shifted after the fall of Assad. You have interim President Ahmed al-Shara trying to rapidly consolidate power.
Yes.
But according to the Arab Center's analysis, he's doing so in a way that is actively alienating key minority groups, specifically the Kurds, the Alawites, and the Druze.
And this kind of exclusion threatens to fracture the country even further, just as it's trying to rebuild.
And in Sudan, the situation remains incredibly dire. The Rapid Support Forces, the RSF, have established firm control over the Darfur region.
There are very real growing fears of a formal geographic partition of Sudan.
Though the regional analysis suggests that neighboring powers actually prefer dealing with a unified, albeit broken and fragile state, rather than facing the unpredictable, chaotic fallout of drawing entirely new national borders.
It's all just incredibly tense.
It is. The regional analyses also highlight rising domestic unrest across North Africa. In Tunisia, President Kais Saied has effectively crushed the democratic opposition, jailing veteran politicians and civil rights activists.
Meanwhile, in Morocco, a youth-led movement dubbed Gen Z 212 is taking to the streets.
Right.
They're protesting the stark, widening divide between the state-of-the-art luxury infrastructure built primarily for tourists.
Like the high-speed rails and massive World Cup stadium.
Exactly. The divide between that and the daily struggles of ordinary citizens who are dealing with failing public services and the aftermath of natural disasters.
Hovering over all of these regional fractures is the international community's handling of the conflict in Gaza. The Arab Center's sources heavily criticize the global diplomatic response.
They point to the ongoing South Africa case at the International Court of Justice.
Right, and the analysts utilize terms like genocidal war to describe the staggering humanitarian toll on the ground, pointing to a profound international failure to enforce accountability or establish a lasting ceasefire.
And when you stack all these regional crises together, from the port delays in South Africa to the proxy clashes in Yemen and the unrest in North Africa.
So what does this all mean? What is the ultimate takeaway for the global order?
It proves, in real time, that we're living in a highly interconnected, deeply volatile world where the established international order is actively fracturing. We're seeing a definitive shift toward transactional, might-makes-right diplomacy.
Yeah.
The institutional guardrails that govern the post-Cold War era, the trade agreements, the international courts, the secure maritime routes, they're failing under pressure, making global stability incredibly fragile.
And that fragility is causing absolute panic in the global financial markets. We're seeing a massive flight to safety right now. The war mania is hitting developing economies particularly hard.
Look at Pakistan's benchmark stock index.
The KSE 100.
Yeah, it plummeted almost 10% in a single trading session as investors panicked. Meanwhile, capital is fleeing to traditional safe havens like gold, driving the price up to a staggering $5,300 an ounce.
$5,300. That's wild. But this market panic is triggering a critical long-term shift in capital flows too, particularly for developing nations in Africa. Over the past decade, sovereign wealth funds from the Gulf states were heralded as the third way for African economic development.
Meaning, if an African nation didn't want to rely on Western foreign aid with all its attached political strings,
or take on heavy restrictive debt from Chinese infrastructure loans,
they could turn to Gulf money as a neutral third option.
It was a vital alternative source of capital for building renewable energy grids, expanding ports, funding local tech startups.
But now, with missiles literally hitting Gulf cities and their primary shipping routes blocked, that capital is rapidly retreating. Gulf nations are pulling their investments homeward.
Right, for their own security?
Domestic security. And to fund their own internal economic transformations, like Saudi Arabia's Vision 2030 project. That sudden retreat leaves a massive funding gap in Africa, right when the continent needs foreign direct investment the most.
Bringing this right down to the ground level, to your professional life and your business, the Thomson Reuters report issued a very stark, actionable warning for corporations navigating this landscape.
They're advising companies to audit their supply chains immediately for any Gulf exposure.
Any exposure. And they aren't just talking about physical goods moving on ships. They're warning businesses to brace for a surge in asymmetric cyber threats. Things like sophisticated ransomware and targeted phishing attacks from Iran and its allied proxy networks.
Because when kinetic warfare escalates in a region, cyber warfare escalates right alongside it. If your company relies on any digital component or service from the region, or if your domestic digital infrastructure isn't fully locked down, you are exposed to this conflict.
The time for businesses to prepare their cybersecurity defenses was yesterday.
Absolutely.
It's a staggering chain reaction we've explored today. I mean, think about how tightly wound our world really is. A military strike happens in the Middle East. That strike forces an insurance company in Europe to cancel a policy, which halts a massive oil tanker in the Gulf.
Which forces a whole fleet of cargo ships to reroute thousands of miles south to South Africa.
That reroute creates a 32-hour traffic jam in the port of Durban. Meanwhile, a drone strike damages a natural gas facility in Qatar, which spikes the price of fertilizer in Egypt.
And that fertilizer spike means less food is grown globally,
which ultimately raises the price of the groceries you buy at your local store.
It truly illustrates the butterfly effect of global commerce. Everything is connected. And looking at all this data leaves me with a very pressing question, one that extends well beyond the immediate crisis we've discussed today.
What's that?
If geographic choke points, like the Strait of Hormuz and the Suez Canal, can so easily and so completely paralyze the global economy, Are we witnessing the definitive end of the just-in-time global supply chain?
Oh, wow.
Will the sheer volatility of the next decade force nations to completely abandon globalization in favor of hyperlocal manufacturing and absolute self-reliance? Because if they do, we're talking about fundamentally reversing 50 years of established economic history.
That is a massive thought to leave on, and something we all need to be paying very close attention to as these events unfold. Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive. Keep questioning the headlines, keep learning how the pieces connect, and as always, stay curious.